Today is day 7 of the September 92 7-day retreat in Springwater. We will have a break today from what we have been doing during talks and read from different authors. Since this is all copyrighted material, this tape will not be for sale, but can be heard here. Someone wishes to do so. Several selections here. The first is from the Zen teaching of Wang Po, translated by John Blofeld. Wang Po lived about 1,000 years ago, and his writings were written down by his disciple, who was also a Buddhist scholar and the governor of the province where Wang Po taught. Then there will be, maybe I'll say it every time, come to a new book. The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind, beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, all measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void, which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking, they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain to it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, it will appear before them. For this mind is the Buddha, and Buddha is all living beings. Word Buddha here does not just refer to the historical personage of Gautama Buddha, but it is a term pointing to the one mind, the unlimited, undivided, awakened mind. Here is a dialogue. Questioner, what is the way, and how must it be followed? Wang Po, what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? Questioner, What instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Wangpo. Words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner. If those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Wangpo. If they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the true teaching by the preachers, for what sort of truth could that be? Questioner. If that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Wangpo. By conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner. But in this way, everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Wangpo, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Questioner. Since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Wangpo. Not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. The void here meaning not empty space, but everything without naming, labeling, remembering, wanting, fearing. The mind being still. Just one of the things that's there. As it is. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Questioner, do you mean we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Wangpo, I have not prevented you. But concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner. Then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the truth? Wangpo. Where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Questioner. Why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? Wangpo. You are a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? See, the moment we think, am I right? Am I right? Am I wrong? Is he reprimanding me, putting me down? We can't listen. We can't listen what the man is saying. Questioner, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the true Dharma or the truth to us. Wangpo, in the truth there is no confusion. But you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of truth can you go seeking for? Questioner. Since the confusion arises from my question, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo. Observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Once I put this question to the Master: how many of the 400 or 500 persons gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your Reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. In a later talk, though others may talk of the way of the Buddhas as something to be reached by various pious practices and by scripture study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, meaning no division, no separation, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding. And by this understanding will you awake to the truth. This understanding is the awakening, is the truth. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourselves to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer both disappointment and sorrow. Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed thing, having nothing to do with truth. Truth is something never lost, even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. Absolute meaning dependent on nothing. Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. Here are a few paragraphs from a book called Being and Becoming by Vimala Thakur, a contemporary Indian teacher. These dialogues with her, or her talks, took place in Dalhousie during the summer of 1989. We are talking about an alternative way of living, which is a meditative way of living. Acquire knowledge, let it flow through you, let it be utilized in its relevant field without creating a knower. If we look at the roots of all human misery, we will find that misery is built upon our stupidity. Maybe a better word than stupidity would be stupefaction. Stupefied, thoughts, ideas. We do not know how to relate to the structures, to the human-made structures, and use them without identification, without creating a sense of authority out of them. Structures are not sacred. It is only life that is sacred. Patterns have no sacredness. Whether you create them in the name of religion, spirituality, or politics, it is the pattern-free, structure-free, virgin dynamism of life that is sacred, that is divine. Wherever you have touched it with thought, you have manipulated it, you have structured it. It has a utility, but not sanctity. It has a utility, but no authority. An alternative way of living is feeding the brain and the system with all the knowledge, the techniques, acquiring all that, using it without getting identified with it. It is only identification with the knowledge that creates an illusion of the knower. It is the creation of a knower that builds up your bondage. Knowledge itself has no power to bind you. It is the creation of the knower that is the obstacle. You have a beautiful, sensitive body, and the sensitivity gets into touch with their respective objects outside, and they bring back to you sensations. Sensations are converted back to electric impulses, and the brain interprets them. It is a marvelous process of what you call experiencing. Contact with the outside world through the senses, which are very delicate, very tender. It is quite hard and arduous work to keep your sensual system pure, healthy, supple, and elastic. Let the experiences flow through the sensual system. Nothing wrong in a sensual, sexual experience, but you create an experiencer, and you get stuck in the experience and its likes and dislikes, its value structures, its preferences, its prejudices, its theories. That's the stupefaction. If the sensual contact with objects is allowed to flow through you without creating an experiencer, then the limited human-made world cannot corrupt you. As the oneness of life manifesting itself into manyness does not get corrupted, does not lose its vitality, does not get mutilated. In the same way you acquire knowledge and you appear as an individual playing the role of father, mother, child, you are one appearing as many. There is no identification with a fatherness, motherness, sonness, daughterness, sisterness, and you don't tie so many knots inside, but play the roles sanely, completely, with the magnificence of an inner equipoise. Then you're appearing as many, functioning as many. You're acquiring the knowledge of structures, and handling of structures shall not corrupt you. In the human-made world, one has to learn to let the knowledge flow without creating a knower, and let the experiences take place without creating an experiencer. And what we have to see is, how is this happening? How we talk to ourselves, react in words and thoughts and memories about what is happening. We've talked about it a lot during this retreat. That, she says, is the way of meditative living. The word meditation has been identified with psychophysical exercises, concentrations, methods, techniques, kundalini, shakti paths. The word has been abused and misused in many ways. No authority and no effort. Freedom from authority and freedom from the struggle of effort. Once you know that these human-made enclosures are only to be lived in, then the sense of comparing yourself with others, like he has a palace and I have a hut, he has millions and I only have hundreds, the sense of comparison and the ambition for competition disappears completely. Your economic life becomes simple, no vanity, no pride about your scholarship, erudition, and so forth, and your social life becomes simple. You do not move around with a begging bowl for sympathy, acceptance, prestige, acknowledgement, and so forth. Reconciled to the limitations, to the enclosures, you live and move in it. Silence is inner, unconditional freedom from the authority of the past. Silence is unconditional freedom from effort and therefore the alternative way of living. Silence, she doesn't mean not talking. Meditation has no repetition at all. It is moment to moment. In the moment of relating, you are living. In the moment of relating with each other, you are living. In the moment of aloneness, you are dying. It is living and dying, like inhaling and exhaling. To be alone is to die to this sense of being somebody or being something. Is not that the content of death and dying? To be alone is to die to the sense of being somebody. Sinner, saint, holy, knowledgeable, respected, rich, poor. To be alone is to die to being something according to the definition of society, according to the value structure of religions. Physically isolating yourself may not lead you to the aloneness. It may or it may not. That is what we're afraid of, dying to the sense of being somebody, dying to all the images we have built up about ourselves as being alone. The way we are tackling the theme may be unusual, unheard of to many. It is a non-conventional way, a non-traditional approach. But I'm really grateful that life brings you and me together. Here are a few autumn poems. Last few times we've been reading summer poems. Now here are autumn poems by Ryokan. The book is called One Robe, One Bowl, translated by John Stevens. Ryokan was born sometime around 1758. One narrow path surrounded by a dense forest. On all sides, mountains lie in darkness. The autumn leaves have already fallen. No rain, but still the rocks are dark with moss. Returning to my hermitage along a way known to few, carrying a basket of fresh mushrooms and a jar of pure water from the well. The rain has stopped, the clouds have drifted away, and the weather is clear again. If your heart is pure, then all the things in your world are pure. Abandon this fleeting world, abandon yourself, then the moon and flowers will guide you along the way. Stone steps, a mound of lustrous green moss. The wind carries the scent of cedar and pine. The rain has stopped and it is beginning to clear. I call to the children as I walk to get some village sake. After drinking too much, I happily write these verses. After a night of rain, water covers the village path. This morning, the thick grass by my hut is cool. In the window, distant mountains, the color of blue-green jade. Outside, the river flows like shimmering silk. Under a cliff near my hut, I wash out my sore ear with pure spring water. In the trees, cicadas recite their fall verse. I had prepared my robe and staff for a walk, but the quiet beauty keeps me here. Autumn night, unable to sleep, I leave my tiny cottage. Fall insects cry under the rocks, and the cold branches are sparsely covered. Far away, from deep in the valley, the sound of water. The moon rises slowly over the highest peak. I stand there quietly for a long time, and my robe becomes moist with dew. A thief has stolen my pillow and cushion. Why did he break into my hermitage? The door is never locked. The night is ending, and I sit alone by the window. A sparse rain falls gently against the bamboo grove. The thief left it behind, the moon at the window. As I watch the children happily playing, without realizing it, my eyes fill with tears. Thinking about the people in this floating world far into the night, my sleeve is wet with tears. Here's a selection from Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, translation by Herter Norton. A young poet sent some poems to Rilke for evaluation, and this is what he wrote back. You ask whether your verses are good. You ask me. You have asked others before. You send them to magazines, you compare them with other poems, and you are disturbed when certain editors reject your efforts. Now, since you have allowed me to advise you, I beg you to give up all that. You're looking outward, and that above all you should not do now. Nobody can counsel and help you. Nobody. There's only one single way. Go into yourself. Search for the reason that bids you to write. Find out whether it is spreading out its roots in the deepest places of your heart. Acknowledge to yourself whether you would have to die if it were denied you to write. This above all. Ask yourself in the stillest hour of your night, must I write? Delve into yourself for a deep answer. And if this should be affirmative, if you may meet this earnest question with a strong and simple I must, then build your life according to this necessity. Your life, even into its most indifferent and slightest hour, must be a sign of this urge and a testimony to it. Then draw near to nature. Then try, like some first human being, to say what you see and experience and love and lose. Do not write love poems. Avoid at first those forms that are too facile and commonplace. They are the most difficult, for it takes a great, fully matured power to give something of your own where good and even excellent traditions come to mind in quantity. Therefore, save yourself from these general themes and seek those which your own everyday life offers you. Describe your sorrows and desires, passing thoughts, and the belief in some sort of beauty. Describe all these with loving, quiet, humble sincerity. If your daily life seems poor, do not blame it. Tell yourself that you are not poet enough to call forth its riches. For to the Creator there is no poverty and no poor, indifferent place. And if out of this, I omit certain passages, and if out of this turning inward, out of this absorption into your own world verses come, then it will not occur to you to ask anyone whether they are good verses. Nor will you try to interest magazines in your poems, for you will see in them a voice of your life. Because you may have to need some money to live too. That's my comment. A work of art is good if it has sprung from necessity. A work of art is good if it has sprung from necessity. In this nature of its origin lies the judgment of it. There is no other. Therefore, my dear sir, I know no advice for you save this: to go into yourself and test the depths in which your life takes rise. At its source you will find the answer to the question whether you must create. But perhaps after this descent into yourself, and into your inner solitude, you will have to give up becoming a poet. But even then, this inward searching, which I ask of you, will not have been in vain. Your life will in any case find its own ways thence, and that they may be good, rich, and wide, I wish you more than I can say. What more shall I say to you? Everything seems to me to have its just emphasis. And after all, I do only want to advise you to keep growing quietly and seriously throughout your whole development. You cannot disturb it more rudely than by looking outward and expecting from outside replies to questions that only your inmost feeling in your most hushed hour can perhaps answer. Here's a selection printed in the Krishnamurti Bulletin from the foundation at Brockwood Park in England, and it is a reprint of a selection from Krishnamurti's notebook, Rajghat in India, 18th December 1961. High up in the mountains, among the barren rocks, with not a tree or bush, was a little stream coming out of massive, unapproachable rock. It was hardly a stream, it was a trickle. As it came down, it made a waterfall, just a murmur, and it came down, down to the valley, and it was already shouting of its strength. The long way it would go through towns, valleys, woods, and open spaces. It was going to be an irresistible river, sweeping over its banks, purifying itself as it went along, crashing over rocks, flowing into far places, endlessly flowing to the sea. It wasn't getting to the sea that mattered, but being a river, so wide, so deep, rich and splendid. It would enter the sea and disappear into the vast, bottomless waters. But the sea was far away, many 1,000 miles, but from now until then it was life, beauty, and ceaseless merriment. None could stop that, not even the factories and the dams. It was really a marvelous river, wide, deep, with so many cities on its banks, so carelessly free and never abandoning itself. All life was there upon its banks, green fields, forests, solitary houses, death, love, and destruction. There were long, wide bridges over it, graceful and well used. Other streams and rivers joined it, but she was the mother of all rivers, the little ones and the big ones. She was always full, ever purifying herself, and of an evening it was a blessing to watch her, with deepening color in the clouds, and her waters golden. But the little trickle so far away, amongst those gigantic rocks, which seemed so concentrated in producing it, was the beginning of life, and its ending was beyond its banks and the seas. Meditation was like that river, only it had no beginning and no ending. It began, and its ending was its beginning. There was no cause, and its movement was its renewal. It was always new, it never gathered to become old. It never got sullied, for it had no roots in time. It is good to meditate, not forcing it, not making any effort, beginning with a trickle and going beyond time and space, thought and feeling. And going beyond time and space where thought and feeling cannot enter, where experience is not. For our last selection, some poems by Mary Oliver from her book House of Light. Moccasin flowers. All my life, so far, I have loved more than one thing, including the mossy hooves of dreams, including the spongy litter under the tall trees. In spring, the moccasin flowers reach for the crackling lick of the sun and burn down. Sometimes, in the shadows, I see the hazy eyes, the lamb lips of oblivion, its deep douse, and I can imagine a new nothing in the universe. The matted leaves splitting open, revealing the black planks of the stairs. But all my life so far, I have loved best how the flowers rise and open, how the pink lungs of their bodies enter the fire of the world and stand there shining and willing. The one thing they can do before they shuffle forward into the floor of darkness, they become the trees. Singapore. In Singapore, in the airport, a darkness was ripped from my eyes. In the women's restroom, one compartment stood open. A woman knelt there, washing something in the white bowl. Disgust argued in my stomach, and I felt in my pocket for my ticket. A poem should always have birds in it. Kingfishers say, with their bold eyes and gaudy wings. Rivers are pleasant, and of course, trees. A waterfall, or if that's not possible, a fountain rising and falling. A person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. When the woman turned, I could not answer her face. Her beauty and her embarrassment struggled together, and neither could win. She smiled, and I smiled. What kind of nonsense is this? Everybody needs a job. Yes, a person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. But first we must watch her as she stares down at her labor, which is dull enough. She's washing the tops of the airport ashtrays, as big as hubcaps, with a blue rag. Her small hands turn the metal, scrubbing and rinsing. She does not work slowly nor quickly, but like a river. Her dark hair is like the wing of a bird. I don't doubt for a moment that she loves her life. And I want her to rise up from the crust and the slop and fly down to the river. This probably won't happen, but maybe it will. If the world were only pain and logic, who would want it? Of course it isn't. Neither do I mean anything miraculous, but only the light that can shine out of a life. I mean, the way she unfolded and refolded the blue cloth, the way her smile was only for my sake. I mean, the way this poem is filled with trees and birds. Turtle. Now I see it. It nudges with its bulldog head the slippery stems of the lilies, making them tremble. And now it noses along in the wake of the little brown teal who is leading her soft children from one side of the pond to the other. She keeps close to the edge, and they follow closely, the good children, the tender children, the sweet children, dangling their pretty feet into the darkness. And now will come, I can count on it, the murky splash, the certain victory of that pink and gassy mouth, and the frantic circling of the hen, while the rest of the chicks flare away over the water and into the reeds, and my heart will be most mournful on their account. But listen, what's important? Nothing is important, except that the great and cruel mystery of the world, of which this is a part, not be denied. Once I happened to see on a city street in summer a dusty, fouled turtle plodding along, a snapper, broken out, I suppose, from some backyard cage, and I knew what I had to do. I looked it right in the eyes and I caught it, put it like a small mountain range into a knapsack, and I took it out of the city and I let it down into the dark pond, into the cool water, and the light of the lilies to live. white owl flies into and out of the field. Coming down out of the freezing sky with its depth of light, like an angel or a Buddha with wings, it was beautiful and accurate, striking the snow and whatever was there with a force that left the imprint of the tips of its wings 5 feet apart, and the grabbing thrust of its feet, and the indentation of what had been running through the white valleys of the snow. And then it rose gracefully and flew back to the frozen marshes to lurk there like a lighthouse in the blue shadows. So I thought, maybe death isn't darkness after all, but so much light wrapping itself around us, as soft as feathers, that we're instantly weary of looking and shut our eyes, not without amazement, and let ourselves be carried as through the translucence of mica to the river that is without the least dapple or shadow, that is nothing but light, scalding aortal light, in which we are washed and washed out of our bones. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We will end here for today.